tablet has a built-in stylus here. This is a Wacom Stylus, so rather than being sort of a high-priced thing, this is a couple of bucks. It's using a technology called electromagnetic resonance, which means that all of the electronics are actually in this device. The only thing inside of this is a little spring and a little coil, so that basically there's an electromagnetic field that emanates from the screen, and it detects the pressure and the sensitivity that I apply via this. So it means that this thing, when it gets lost, because let's be honest, Styli get lost, is really inexpensive to replace. It also means that there's no pairing whatsoever. This is not a Bluetooth device that you have to sync or anything like that. It also means that multiple students can come and share their own pen and kind of write on each other's devices, so it becomes really, really collaborative. And it just slips right in here. It comes in all of our new Chromebooks. So you've got touchscreen apps, you've got nice keyboard to type on, because let's be honest, in classrooms you do a whole lot of typing, and it just runs apps. So
what did you say that device is called?
Oh, this is a Lenovo device, but it's actually it's one of our EDU Chromebooks.
EDU Chromebook.
Education, yeah. So if you go to education.google.com and you look for one of our next generation Chromebooks, next generation Chromebook means there's a camera on both sides, there's a stylus built into it, and it has a touchscreen, and it flips over to convertible mode. These range in price. This is probably around $300 or something like that. I just click the Scratch button, and here we are. It just runs Scratch Junior, just as if it were on a tablet device or a phone device. Sorry, that's not the demo. Here's the demo. The thing's got Gorilla Glass, so the glass doesn't break, and this thing is just covered in foam interior-wise, so all the electronics are shielded. It's got a really robust plastic. I'll do it again. They don't break. It's really practical.
Commentary?
It might not be the sexiest thing in the world, but it just works for classrooms. It doesn't create headaches. These things should not be a distraction. They should not take out of your school budget any more than absolutely necessary, right? We just want to make it easy to put these tools into the hands of students so the teachers don't have to worry about it. Because at the end of the day, they're tools, right? They're bicycles for your brain. Thank you, Steve Jobs. I'm Andy. I've been to a couple of these before. I've been to them when they were a little bit bigger over in Merrill Hall. I actually really like the feel of this, but it's noticeable to see how fewer people are here in the room today than maybe in 2011, 2012, when it was kind of, as Darren said, the gold rush of the app movement. And I see that very much as an evolution. I don't see this as being anywhere near the equilibrium or the asymptote. I see this as sort of a bump in the potential market, and I wanted to talk to you guys about that. I'm going to talk a little bit. I made some slides because when you're invited to talk, you make slides, and that's how you do it. But I'm going to try to keep the words to a minimum and actually flip this around and pass the microphone around, because I'm hoping to have a conversation with you guys. As I said earlier, I'm a recovering app designer. I hope to one day again be an app designer. I love building apps. I actually started my career making toys, G.I. Joes and Transformers and My Little Ponies. Moved to apps in 2008, 2009 when these cool touchscreens came out, and I could move a lot more quickly with bits than I could atoms. Oh cool, I have a timer. Nice. I decided a couple of years ago to stop making apps. And I decided to stop making apps because I saw the trend of where the market was going and how difficult it was, and all of you know that. And I thought, well, hey, I work for a big company right now that can actually kind of move things at the market level. And I would like to take advantage of that. And I would like to kind of step back from the day-to-day of building tools for kids and see if I can help to move the needle a little bit of the market and help you guys out as well. So when I say I want to have a conversation, that's why I'm here today. I want to hear from you. I want to share some ideas that we have over at Google. And see what you think about them, and hear your ideas for ways we might be able to kind of get this back, not only to where it was a couple of years ago, but far more than I think it ever has been before. When I say I want to talk about evolution, I want to talk about schools. I want to talk about devices. I want to talk about kids. I want to talk a little bit about, at the risk of that sword coming down on my neck and Warren playing me off with the piano, a little bit about the business of apps and toys and tools. I know that's not typically in the purview of Dust or Magic. I tried to have that conversation a couple years ago. I think Warren gave it a stink eye at the time.
It's important.
It's important. It's going to help us to get to where we want to be, right? And I think everyone in this room really wants to be in a much more viable and sustainable place. So let's rewind a little bit. Let's look at this as an evolutionary story. Let's talk about schools. Like medieval times, what were schools? There were kind of two different forms of schools. There were things like seminaries on the left, which were typically for very wealthy people who were looking to learn about locked down, buttoned up things like the Bible. Weren't really great for building and creating and inventing and imagining. That was actually more the purview of apprenticeships. So if you wanted to learn how to make something or how to do something or how to invent things, you would go work with a blacksmith or a woodworker or a baker. And schools were kind of those two different variants for many, many years. And then we see the agricultural revolution and the industrial revolution in the sort of late 1800s, early 1900s. And all of a sudden we have this need for a massive workforce of educated folks. And they thought, well, what's the most scalable thing that we have? Scalable being a big word. And they thought, well, the apprenticeship thing doesn't scale very well, but that seminary thing is pretty cool. Let's start applying that to the masses. This thing that only rich kids got before. Now let's build one-room schoolhouses and take the top-down didactic model and apply it to everyone else. And then this guy came around and said, hey, wait a second, I'm watching my grandchildren, and this is Piaget for those of you who don't recognize this photo. I'm watching my grandchildren and I'm seeing them learn in a very, very different way than I ever did in classrooms. And what's going on here? And he introduced this idea of constructivism that was very iterative and very cyclical. And it said, well, kids start with an idea and then they build on that idea, whether it's through playing, dress up or role play, or whether it's through building Legos or constructing Lincoln Logs or programming turtles. And then they share that idea, whether it's through social play or whether it's posting it on Scratch or whether it's just verbally telling stories with one another. And then they refine those ideas based on the feedback that you get from others. It's from me sharing my ideas to you, and then you yelling at me and saying, no, that's not right, that I refine my idea. And I go through this over and over and over again. And this is, kind of slips through the cracks a little bit for a few years, but a pretty revolutionary idea. Because at the time, when you think about the one-room schoolhouse, what you're thinking about is the teacher as like a pitcher of water, essentially, and students as these empty vessels. And the teacher would just like stand at the head of the classroom and then pour the water into each of the students, maybe equally, maybe not. But it was a one-way model. And then Jean Piaget gets up there and he's like, no, this is not a one-way model. And then you put his stuff with Lev Vygotsky, and it basically actually kind of takes the teacher out of it a little bit. It puts the teacher in the role of the facilitator and says that these kids are actually learning from each other, because that creating and that sharing and refining, most of it actually happens when I talk to my friends. Most of it happens when I talk to my older brother or my older sister or my cousins. I actually listen to my parents and my teachers far less than I do my peers. And this is pretty radical. So this guy comes along. For those of you who don't know him, Seymour Papert. We've talked about him a little bit already today. In the late 1960s, he's heading up this new wacky field of artificial intelligence, which it's kind of a big deal now. And he's at the Media Lab, and well, it wasn't the Media Lab at the time. He and Marvin Minsky working together, and they would form this thing called the Media Lab. They were trying to build computers that thought better, that thought like humans. And Papert thought to himself, okay, well, I'm going to go learn from the people who know about learning. And there's this guy, Jean Piaget, over in Switzerland, who is an epistemologist, which is a fancy word for someone who studies learning. And he went for a year or so and hung out with Jean Piaget. And he came back a changed man. And at the time, Papert's his mission was to essentially teach computers how to think like humans. And he came back a year later, and he thought, what if I could teach humans to think better through computers? That is a fundamentally different life mission. And he built this thing on the left. You see, that's his first turtle. It was powered by like a typewriter VCR combo hybrid piece of hardware that he built, but it was actually like a plastic glass turtle that would roam around the floors of MIT. And it would enable kids to program their own turtles, and it's pretty cool. And then in the like late 70s, early 80s, we have the Apple computer. We start to see the Apple II in classrooms, and Papert and his team look at this and they're like, oh my gosh, this hardware thing is really hard to scale. What if we just turn this into software? And that's my first introduction to computers. I first learned how to program a turtle in Logo, and so many other kids who were very privileged to have computers in the classrooms got to go program on that thing. And then Mindstorms comes out in the late 80s, and we start to see Lego adopt it and mass sort of market adoption. Then we have Mitch and his team over at MIT taking these ideas even further with the evolution of Scratch. And now, all these years later, at Google I/O 3 weeks ago, we see, I think ironically, the person who built this had no idea what it actually was, but a Android Things turtle with a marker on it. So all of these years coming back full circle is pretty cool to see. Sam Labs, if you guys haven't played with that stuff in the middle, it's one of my favorite toys out there right now. They're little Bluetooth circuits that instead of, they're kind of like little bits, but instead of having to plug them all in together, they just pair dynamically with the device. And you can basically turn anything that you build, whether it's a Lego or whether it's made out of cardboard or construction paper, into an interactive device without having to worry about powering the individual units or plugging them all together or anything like that. Anyway, all these ideas kind of come in full circle. And you're asking, what does any of this have to do with Chromebooks? And they all build up to one of Papert's last works, the Olpc Project, which was sort of an extension of the main laptop project, which was Papert's big last project. And the fundamental idea for OLPC was, let's make computers that are robust and low cost and flexible, and put them in the hands of as many students around the world as we possibly can. And there were a lot of really cool ideas there. Execution-wise, they ran into some hurdles. The Olpc project, I think it made it into V1 and V2. It never quite blossomed into what Negroponte and his team really wanted it to be. But I think the idea was wonderful. And some folks over at Google, a couple of years after the Olpc project kind of went like that, they decided that they wanted to kind of grab that mantle. And they wanted to try to do the same thing. They were going to take a fundamentally different approach. And in the last 5 years, we've gone from having this netbook with a really low-powered operating system to, in the US last year, we were at something like 60% of devices in classrooms. In 5 years, we've gone from just, what if kind of idea to being, the leading platform in most classrooms around the world, and in the US and a number of other countries, pretty significant one-to-one adoption. And I joined that team last year, actually. Because of that curve, I was really excited about this idea of getting these devices that are flexible and easy to use and really, really scalable into the hands of as many kids as possible. So there are basically 4 ideas driving the Chromebook. One is that we want it to be really, really easy. Easy for the students, easy for the teachers, easy for the administrators. We don't want computers to be the thing that we all grew up with, which was like really, really hard to manage, like designed by engineers, almost for engineers. We wanted it to be appliance. And we wanted, key in this whole idea of easy is actually very secure as well. So one of the challenges of the Olpc, for instance, was local storage. All of your files were stored directly on that hard drive. So when that device broke, you had to spend a lot of time and a lot of money getting all of your student information off of those things. You had to actually repair those things. Well, we thought to ourselves, what if all the student data actually went up into the cloud? What if we didn't have to worry about repairing low devices? What if we could make really low-cost devices that you could just replace and simply log into another one, right? That's a pretty powerful idea. We talked about affordability, not just building low-cost devices. Most people can build low-cost devices. We talked about affordability in building a model that is shared, right? So Chromebooks essentially started as a cart model. You built a cart of, say, 30 devices, and you would pass that cart around, you would move it around classroom to classroom to classroom. And any student, all your data is stored at the account level. So any student can log into any device at any time, and his or her information just appears magically. His or her apps just appear magically. You pick up exactly where you left off. All your tabs are open, everything like that. And so it is like a seamless computing experience. You don't have to worry about buying one device for every student, although ultimately that's where we all want to be. You can start with this sort of shared device model and just pick up where you left off. So all of a sudden it allows schools to kind of start to dip their toe in the water and ease their way into the migration flow, as opposed to saying, hey, we're going to go from paper and pencil to computers overnight like that. It's also really affordable to maintain. So it used to be that computers were basically computer rooms, right? You'd have 30 desktop computers in a room and students would march out of their classroom down the hall to go and spend half an hour on an Oregon trip or take a typing class or something like that. And the way we see the world is these computers are tools, right? They shouldn't be something you spend a couple hours a week on. It shouldn't be something where you go play a game to enrich or have some sort of like honors class or study hall or special ed experience. Computers should be with you every step of the way. They're not necessarily better or worse than any other tool like a protractor or a ruler or pencil or paper. They are one of the many tools you have available to you. And if you were to say to a student, like, you can only use that pencil or that notebook half an hour a day, that wouldn't be a very good model. We want to make sure these tools are available to students at all times. So when we say affordable, what we mean is it needs to have the same sort of minimal administrative staff, IT staff, that say a computer classroom would or a media room would, which is essentially like one teacher dedicated to that room for the entire school. But instead of 30 devices in one room, it needs to be 3,000 devices scattered across the whole school. So how do you do that? Well, again, the cloud model comes in here. Every Chromebook in an entire school district can be administered through a single website by a single person. All of them get policies pushed to them, essentially. You don't go hands-on to every single device. You go into the Google admin console, you set a bunch of settings, you move students around in terms of their permissions, you hit go, and the next time the student logs into that device, they pull down all of their settings from the cloud. They pull down all of the data from the cloud. And so there's no need to go device to device to device. As soon as a device breaks, you kind of like put it in the repair bin, you grab another one that's fresh, you give it to the student, you're up and ready to go. You don't have to worry about operating systems being sort of behind the times and being potentially buggy or susceptible to malware because the operating system is updating every single time you log in. This is inherently a far more scalable model for computing for large institutions. We wanted devices to be versatile. This is the new Chrome OS tablet that we're going to be rolling out this year. That is an example, that's a Wacom Stylus that comes built into the tablet. I have one here if you guys want to play with it. And that is our handwriting keyboard. So instead of a soft keyboard that we found to be challenging and chunky, we put a handwriting keyboard built into the thing so students can just handwrite directly on the keyboard, and we use our ML software to detect what the student's handwritten, and then we pop it into the text field.
Is that something we could pass around?
Yeah, absolutely.
Let's do that.
When we log in while I talk, see what my multitasking skills are here.
Get his identity while I
And when we talk about scalability, we talk about impact. That's sort of our fourth bullet, is we didn't want to be a computer for the rich kids. We didn't want to be a computer for the first world countries. We wanted to be a computer for everybody, right? Steve Jobs has that wonderful quote of, computers are a bicycle for your brain. Well, it's great if we can give, 1% of kids bicycles or the rich kids the bicycles. But at the end of the day, bicycles are far more impactful in the hands of kids who are going to use them every single day, who really need to go the extra distance than they are, just putting them in the hands of the wealthy, at the feet of the wealthy. So this is like one of my favorite slides of all time. This is 5 years since we introduced the first Chromebook in the classrooms. So it started in about 2012 and went to 2017. So you see the colors getting darker. That's the United States, went from 0% market adoption to 60% market adoption in 5 years. That's 60% of devices being sold to classrooms in 2017 were getting Chromebooks. And you're starting to see that in Australia and New Zealand and parts of Europe and South America, and we're starting to expand other parts of the globe as well. And so this is how we think about impact. I want to talk about evolution because I think we're at about a 5 right now. I think we're at about a 5 on the sort of Chromebook side, but also on the market side. There are things that we do really, really well. There are things that we have not done well traditionally, but are getting a lot better at. And then there are things that we need to do better at, not just as Google, but as a market. And that's kind of when I talk about the evolution of the business. So this was our first Chromebook here on the left. It was a couple years ago, basically us taking some of these netbook devices, these really low-cost, low-powered Windows devices, and saying, what if we stripped out the really heavy operating system, the expensive operating system, and put in a Linux variant, something that was a lot faster, a lot lighter weight, and basically moved everything to the cloud. And then this is our Pixelbook, which I'm presenting on right now. which we released last year. It's a convertible device. It has a pen, it has a touchscreen, it has cameras, it is super lightweight, it is really, really fast and powerful. It runs Android apps, it runs web apps, it runs extensions, it does all of the things that you would want a modern day computer to do. So on the hardware side, it has definitely been an evolution. And on the software side, it's been a remarkable evolution as well. You know, in 2010, we essentially launched with Google Docs and the web. And we had Drive, so we had an option for you to store things. You could make some slides, you could make some spreadsheets, you could make some word processing docs. That's cool. Like it's a web-based version of a computer that you would have expected in, I don't know, 1989 or something like that. But in 2018, on the right, that's a version of an app I worked on. We have like a full-blown operating system, a full-blown developer story. So Toontastic, which is the app on the right, this version was built in Unity, was published as an iOS app, was published as an Android app. Goes up onto the Play Store, and on a Chromebook today, you can just open up the Play Store and install an Android app just like you would install an Android app on an Android phone, and it just works. No questions asked. We didn't have to do a single thing to modify Toontastic to make it work on Chromebooks, and it works with the pen, and it works with the touchscreen, and it works with the camera, and everything is just kind of like auto magic, at least to the user. So now we've got like a really robust development environment. And just actually a couple weeks ago, we announced that you can actually run Linux apps now on Chromebooks, which is particularly cool for the developers in the room because it means you can run Android Studio, which means that you can now write and code and design an app on a device, and then one button, just run it exactly on the device that it would ultimately be built for, right? So you're not tethering a device and having to ADB over, you're not having to export a build and then sideload it on a device or anything like that. Like the iteration loop is just really lightning quick for actually getting Android apps up and running. So that's been our evolution of the hardware and our evolution of the software. The big missing piece here is the market. I believe that we should be in the golden age of children's media. When I started building stuff like this in, I don't know, 2005 or something like that, it cost so much money to build even a simple toy that would talk to you, right? And the cycles for building that were ungodly long. It would take me a year to get something back and forth from Hong Kong that would just have like beeps and boops and lasers and stuff like that. And now we live in this age where I used to have an apartment right across from the Children's Creativity Museum in San Francisco, and I would build something in the afternoon and then run it across the street and test it with the kids and then come back and actually make the changes that I need. And we have these devices that are ubiquitous, and they have gyroscopes and accelerometers, and they have augmented reality, 6 degrees of freedom controls, like unreal stuff. And yet the last piece in all of this is how do we get to a sustainable business? On the left here, we have the Chrome Web Store, which we launched with Chromebooks a number of years ago, and this was our idea for how do we do the market. And it was essentially an app store. And that's where we are all these years later. We haven't seen this evolution in the market that we've seen in the evolution in the hardware or an evolution in the software. And I want to fix that, and that's what I'm working on doing. So I'm going to just stop. I'm not going to do the demos because I think it's more important that we have a conversation. I'm going to stop talking, and I'm just going to throw out a couple of ideas that have been kind of driving my work. And I want to hear what you guys have to say, and I'll flip the microphone around. See you. Here's the first one. I think for the last 5 years we've been thinking about schools as glorified homes. And we think that the market solution that works for consumers will also work for schools. And we basically say teachers are just like parents, and they're going to pick apps for their students, and they're going to buy them using the coins that they happen to have in their couch cushions, those same coins that they're using to buy markers and crayons and hand sanitizer. And that's going to be the model. It's a very much bottom-up model. And I think that's fundamentally wrong. I think that schools are large enterprises. As much as we like to think of them as friendly places, as places that are driven by teachers, at the end of the day, these devices, they're kind of like the heating and the plumbing, right? They're kind of like the textbooks. They're not bought by teachers. They shouldn't be bought by teachers. They shouldn't be run by the teachers. They should be used by the teachers. But at the end of the day, it's the school administrators that are driving. That has been the success of the Chromebook, right? We've seen that the top-up or the bottom-up model is kind of broken, and the top-down model, where the administrator and the district, the folks that have the money, they're the ones driving. So this is my first idea. What do you guys think? Yeah.
And my experience is that not only are they large enterprises, but they are large enterprises with just, you know, when I think of large enterprise, I usually think there's like an IT department when you have a large enterprise, but they don't have that.
Understaffed large enterprises.
It's understaffed. Seriously, it's like it's not understaffed from the educational side, but it's understaffed, seriously understaffed when it comes to IT. And they still are. I mean, this is what, 28 years later. And they still are. And they are, but they are. They're large enterprises, absolutely.
Just following up on that is in the schools we used to have, well, some of the districts I was in, we used to have IT, and with the budget cuts, that was like the first thing. It was like,
yeah.
oh, teachers, they know how to do computers, you know how to use the app store at home and the cloud at home, but like using it in a large enterprise is entirely different. And that, you know, that burden falls to the teachers to figure out how to use all of this. And so I have to admit, I'm an Apple person. I wasn't always an Apple person, and I kind of became that way through the schools.
Yeah.
And you know, when you started talking about Chromebook, I'm like, oh, I don't know about this. And like listening to your thing at the beginning, I mean, I'm like signing up today. Like,
Well, try it out first.
I like how easy you're making it in terms of the versatility of it, and that you can move from one device to another. And I think in the schools, you know, there's all this sell and promise that this next greatest thing is the thing that's going to like revolutionize your life and really help you teach the kids and make learning accessible. And I really see that in what you were talking about versus like this is just another product that you may not. So.
I said I wouldn't do demos. I'm going to do one demo.
The teachers don't want to be technologists. I had over and over, I've had teachers tell me that. They want to be able to send the kid and say, you guys go play with this, and I'm going to go over and give some attention to, you know, this child that actually needs my personal attention.
So this is, sorry, quick demo. This is one of our EDU laptops, so it converts over, turns into a tablet. Has a built-in stylus here. This is a Wacom Stylus, so rather than being sort of a high-priced thing, this is a couple of bucks. It's using a technology called electromagnetic resonance, which means that all of the electronics are actually in this device. The only thing inside of this is a little spring and a little coil, so that basically there's an electromagnetic field that emanates from the screen, and it detects the pressure and the sensitivity that I apply via this. So it means that this thing, when it gets lost, because let's be honest, the style I get lost, is really inexpensive to replace. It also means that there's no pairing whatsoever. This is not a Bluetooth device that you have to sync or anything like that. It also means that multiple students can come and share their own pen and kind of write on each other's devices, so it becomes really, really collaborative. And it just slips right in here. It comes in all of our new Chromebooks. So you've got touchscreen apps, you've got nice keyboard to type on, because let's be honest, in classrooms you do a whole lot of typing, and it just runs apps. So
What did you say that device is called?
Oh, this is a Lenovo device, but it's actually it's one of our EDU Chromebooks.
EDU Chromebook.
Education, yeah. So if you go to education.google.com and you look for one of our next generation Chromebooks, next generation Chromebook means there's a camera on both sides, there's a stylus built into it, and it has a touchscreen, and then flips over to convertible mode. These range in price. This is probably around $300 or something like that. I just click the Scratch button, and here we are. It just runs Scratch Junior, just as if it were on a tablet device or a phone device. Sorry, that's not the demo. Here's the demo. The thing's got Gorilla Glass, so the glass doesn't break, and this thing is just covered in foam interior-wise, so all the electronics are shielded. It's got a really robust plastic. I'll do it again. They don't break. It's really practical. It might not be the sexiest thing in the world, but it just works for classrooms. It doesn't create headaches. These things should not be a distraction. They should not take out of your school budget any more than absolutely necessary, right? We just want to make it easy to put these tools into the hands of students so the teachers don't have to worry about it. Because at the end of the day, they're tools, right? They're bicycles for your brain. Thank you, Steve Jobs. Sorry, that was my demo. Yeah.
So yes, I agree with this idea, but
Yeah.
I think the silos between who makes the decision and who carries it out is really real. And so, you know, when I need to learn to teach with a new tool, I need to learn how to teach with a new tool. And so sort of how do we how do we help teachers learn how to just not make this, you play with this while I do this other thing.
Yeah.
But really integrate it into the meaningful learning experience. Like,
Yeah.
there's a huge art and science to that isn't just, oh, now I have it, I can do it.
Yeah.
We have to change how teachers are teaching to really, I think, to really leverage the promise of the technology. Otherwise, it's just going to be used like in my kids' school as, oh, do your math quiz here
Distraction.
so that I can check
Extra
it
time.
later.
And
And
see,
you have to allow the teachers to be able to do that.
Yeah.
That's the other part.
Right.
They don't have time to do that.
Right.
and Susan, when are you going to speak?
This afternoon.
This afternoon. So,
Cool.
yeah, I want you guys to definitely know each other.
Part of this is so before doing apps, I used to do CD-ROMs, but that's the way. It used
You mean
to
the coasters that I have in my house?
Yes, the
Yeah.
but that's the way the model was before. I mean, I had a publisher, and then my publisher, and at the time I was like, how come I'm just getting such a smaller road to work, And when the iPad came out, I was like, great, I don't need a publisher. I can just kind of do it myself.
Yeah.
But before that, the model was the publisher was going into the schools, and they were talking to the decision makers, and they were selling my product not
For
at
you.
the teacher level, but they were selling it at the district level.
Yeah.
They were selling, you still had teachers. I might see teachers at a conference. The teachers then would go to their principal, and then the principal would then either contact these salespeople, or the salespeople were going in. So that's kind of looking back to some of how the older model used to work.
Darren, thank you for being my plant in the audience.
Sure.
Segue to my next point. What do you guys think about this one?
Well,
To Darren, sorry, I'm explaining this a little bit. To Darren's point, so if you're Scholastic or you're Houghton Mifflin or you're Pearson, you have a team of developers and you have a team of infrastructure, and then you've got a sales team, and your sales team is like this big, and your development team is like this big, and your infrastructure team is like this big. So about like 60 to 70% of your team building educational content, curriculum, software, whatever you want to call it, is actually not in classrooms designing, is not actually, fingers on the keyboards coding. They're in the business side of making it happen. I think we can do better. I think that we can adopt that model of having sales organizations acting on your behalf as smaller companies and scaling and going out there to schools without you having to build sales organizations to do it, right?
What is the current model for schools, accessing schools?
So you can either have a website and then you can go to the school. So like, I don't know, Newsella. You can have a subscription. MotionMath, let's use MotionMath as an example. So MotionMath just recently adopted a subscription model. So they put their apps all up on their website, and then you go to motionmath.com and you sign up for a subscription for your classroom, and then they basically provision a bunch of accounts for all of your students, and it's a recurring annual revenue per user or per site license, whatever it might be per classroom, depends on the company. But you basically like have a business relationship as a school with that independent vendor. And it requires building a sales staff to get MotionMath stuff into every single classroom, or word of mouth, right? You just hustle a whole lot as a founder, which gets you to a certain level, maybe, but is never going to get you to, sustainable, be able to like actually breathe and sleep at night. And I fundamentally believe that older model is actually more scalable for schools. I was like, I thought I had 5 minutes left. I fundamentally believe that the older model with not necessarily publishers, but sales staff is more scalable. I just don't think that the sales staff should be inside of the companies they're doing, developers. That's not to say they can't be, but I think that they shouldn't have to be. Right? You shouldn't have to build a huge sales organization. You shouldn't have to build your own subscription engines. You shouldn't have to do all of this stuff yourself in order to have a company that scales.
And I think we all, sorry to interrupt. Yeah.
Would you raise your hand, Mark?
We all agree with you. We're all looking for this change in the marketplace. But part of the problem has been, I know, when we started building apps, we were selling them to, Barry's gone, but Barry was the first one who actually gave me a bunch of numbers from their products and saying, well, here's how much money we got at the App Store, and but in Google Play, even though we were using this much, it was all being ripped off, and we only got this much money.
Yeah.
And so a lot of us never converted our stuff over to anything that ran in Google Play because
Yeah.
we were just getting ripped off. There was no marketplace for it, and you got bought, so you didn't have to deal with that anymore. So, you know, yes, we all love a place. We'd like to have. I mean, we were just talking about the whole relationship to publishers, which was a great thing for young, small developers to be able to come in and they didn't have to deal with the marketing. So you're answering all the questions, one after the other. Yeah, sounds good. Yeah. But how do we make money coming into this? You know, why would I want to convert any of my old titles over?
Yeah. I'm not advocating on behalf of any of the solutions in the market today.
Okay.
And I would be more than happy to talk to you.
It all sounds great. I'm just trying to figure out how do we hook into it? How do we wire that?
Yeah. We're on camera right now, but if you want to talk about it afterwards, there you go. Carolyn.
But just so I understand, so what you're saying is that instead of like having a big sales organization for every company that wants to go into school, Google, you guys through the Chromebooks, you're going to be that company, and everyone else can just focus on making good products for kids because you're going to build them and deal with all of the administration. And in terms of people making the products, then as long as we would make great products that kids use and love in the classrooms, then the financial part of it is going to be okay.
That sounds like alchemy, and I think we've all been in the market long enough to know that alchemy is not real. Nor do I think that getting Google to hustle on your behalf is the model that scales either. No, I'm not interested in selling your software. What I'm interested in is building a platform and an infrastructure that enables people who do want to sell your software to sell your software for you. And again, you know, we can go into more detail later if you want to talk about it. But you know, fundamental idea here is like I want to enable everyone in this room, not just big people in this room, like bigger companies as well, to take advantage of common infrastructure and common relationships out there in the market today. Schools buy from resellers. You know, schools have POs, and let's take advantage of that.
I think one of the things that makes this statement difficult for me, you don't need a big company to make a big impact, is in the, you know, a lot of us have been talking about over the years the cycles of the markets, and when you have a new product and you have the beginning of a new market, there aren't as many voices that are trying to compete for the space.
Right.
If everybody in this room starts talking on top of me talking, then nobody's going to really get heard, and the one that gets heard is the one with the biggest voice, and the one with the biggest voice is usually the biggest company. And so I think that this statement is true at the beginning of a market, and it's not so true when the market starts to get really flooded with lots and lots of people all trying to get that voice.
Is that only true when the biggest company is the one that has the sales staff? If the people who were selling,
Could be, because they have more people.
right,
You
but
know.
if the people were selling were divorced from that company and
Yeah.
were selling based on merit, doesn't that change?
It's an interesting idea. It's not something we've seen yet.
Okay.
Exactly.
One of the other things that the publisher did was they also filtered stuff out. So the other thing that like the App Store did was it just said everybody can now go there, which is awesome. But the other thing the publisher did was they kind of filtered it down to what they thought that were really good stuff was. And so then their sales force wasn't representing everybody, it was representing the ones that they found that they thought were sellers.
The publishers became trusted brands.
Yeah.
So I
Is
was
that a
gonna,
good thing or a bad thing?
No, I think that helps. I think with your idea of having these sales guys, I think they would be doing that same kind of thing because they would know these are the products that I can sell. And I'm assuming that they would eventually start saying, well, if I know I can sell to the local a lot, that's one of the ones I'm going to show when I go in there. And so they might be making, the salespeople might be making contacts with the schools, and as they go in, they'll come in, they'll say, here are the 6 things I think you need to take a look at today. And they're going to put the 6 things that they think are going to be good sellers.
Yeah, but I think that this probably, if I compare the space with other spaces that we're in, there's something very nice to not have third party in between and be able to talk to the people that actually work at the company that own the marketplace. Then it's as frustrating to be like, no one knows if the features are not featured, etc. But at least to have the opportunity as a developer to go in and show what you built and to have a larger revenue stake than like when we do like physical products. There's something, at least it might not be true, but you feel it. Like, but this is from a very, I don't know if it's like makes more sense from a like business sense, but this is an emotional thing when you have something.
Yeah, it's definitely better to do it that way. But if you're like a smaller guy, I'm not going to be making this to the schools in Texas.
No.
I'm not going to be in Hawaii making visits in the districts there. I'm not, I might be able to get to the little area around me, but when you are talking about smaller, that option is
If it was a medical metaphor, if I'd gone to a medical conference and the doctors were talking about using knives to cut out or leeches for bleeding, it'd be malpractice. It'd be illegal. There'd be laws passed. But we have schools that are still, the disconnect is still here, and that's what's so frustrating.
I'll take that metaphor a step further. It's like you walk into a doctor's office and they've got an MRI machine in the corner and they're using leeches for bleeding.
Yeah,
Like,
good.
The
Thank
equipment is there, right?
Yeah.
Like the platforms to develop is there. It's easier than ever. I mean, let's talk about the magic of Unity, right? Like write once, publish anywhere. Oh my God, this is stuff that 5 years ago we would have been salivating over, right? And this one last piece, it's like the crazy bottleneck. And I don't know. Some of these ideas I think are good. Maybe some of them are not as good. We'll find out over the next couple of years. I did want to throw one more out there. I've got, thank you. I thought I was going to get the Sword of Sarah, but apparently I had some extra minutes. I don't think this one is going to get a whole lot of pushback, but I just wanted to throw it out there anyway. Yeah, Barbara.
So I think these three points that you put up are really intricately connected. And so part of me is it feels like 2010 again, and it's so exciting about how small publishers can get out there and all the people that we know and love with these fantastic apps, like Toontastic, others, and it's like, yes, the small publishers. But I think you make two really important points that we have missed in the last 8 years.
Okay.
And first is buying decisions are from top down.
Yep.
And quality decisions are from bottom up.
Yep.
And so what kind of has made our room smaller and more intimate since 2010 is school districts spent IT funding on low-end computers for standardized testing that did not support some of the quality apps that we had. And so where teachers wanted the more expensive apps, they didn't have the equipment to run it. But the other really important point you made about MotionMath, about this MotionMath, fantastic products. One of the problems MotionMath had, they succeeded by keeping a really small tight development team, but from a range of all the content they could do, they could do this much content, and all the content that a K-12 district needed access to. So a K-12 district wants a subscription model where they can offer all the content for all the things. So the companies that will respond to that are the ones who can say, okay, we can give you really crappy 1950s pedagogy that can scale across all the content because we can give you all of that. So I think those two things are contradictory, and this explains why paid apps don't scale. If we do top-down purchasing, they are looking for the best quality tool for coding, and the best quality tool for learning math, and the best quality tool for Montessori learning. They are looking for the cheapest solution for K-12, and that takes the teacher out of
In a lot of
that.
cases for testing specifically.
Right, and testing, of course, is what's driven that, but that's why paid apps don't scale. So when you talk about who's going to be that subscriber that was going to amplify, we've got a lot of hope for StoryToys. We saw it through GlassLabs trying to do that, Fingerprint Digital is trying to do that, MotionMath with their recent acquisition. I think Michelle's question about what's the model now, everyone's like, yeah, what is the model now? Because what we need is not the sales force to go get my app out in front of people. What we need is the sales force that puts my high quality app with other high quality apps, with one subscription base that we can all buy into as part of that. I think that's the new subscription base. And I have to tell you, if there is anything, I love that Willow is like, I'm on board now, I want to be helpful. But what I need to be on board is that right there. I need somebody to curate the high quality apps, present one place for a subscription base where I put my app into that. It's high quality, it's high curated, and the school district, if they want to buy the awesome technology, I'm down with that as well. But if they want to then get a subscription model for the high quality stuff and not the cheap plug and play content and anything, that's what we really get excited.
I got a follow-up question for you, Barbara.
Just build that.
Is that subscription a la carte or is it buffet?
Well, and that's, I think we haven't, I mean, we've seen a couple models, I think we've seen a couple models that for different reasons, and maybe if we bring it back, maybe the glass subs would come back and try again for different reasons. My suspicion is I would like it to be buffet, because then it truly is. Here's all of our stuff, people can pick that up, but it still has to be curated a little bit. I think the a la carte would break down if you have that top-down purchasing model, because you don't want your school boards deciding exactly what apps are going to be taught for 6th grade algebra. If your teacher wants to have some input into that, so the school board could say, okay, well, teacher, you can have $500 buy whatever software you want, but what would be better is for the school board to say, we bought into a system, it's curated, it's good stuff, you go do what you want there. So I would say buffet. What would you say?
And
kind of a la carte is what we have now.
And I just want to add that curated, high quality arena. I think the thing with teachers and educators is we're just drowning in options, and we don't have the time to figure out and go through and curate all of that content ourselves to figure out what's good, high quality, and what isn't. And so being able to search through things, not just be able to see the smorgasbord of everything, but like, okay, here are your vegetables, here are your sauces, and be able to sort through like the different kinds of content and the different features and the different ways we can identify what programs and content fit the students that we have.
But who decides? How does that determine that?
Yeah,
That seems a little bit like that leadership. Politics, how can that be fair as well, though?
How do you say that about finding, like, maybe there's not like the optimal way of doing it, but there is a better way of doing it than what we have today. And if there is a company that is positioned, that has a lot of knowledge and technology, that has built this thing that kids can throw into the ground, and that knows a lot about what's going on in the classroom, is that maybe it's not in a perfect world, but then if we can ask that company to hire people with really good understanding of what is high quality in the classroom, we can at least move away from having 1950s solutions in the classroom and take it closer to our day and age. And then if that company would fail on that trust, then at least we've tried something that is better than what we have now.
Pierre,
Just to clarify, am I the kid that threw it on the ground or the guy who understands what high quality looks like?
Or only use CTR recommended apps.
yeah, try that.
This is the counterpoint to that issue right there. Paid apps don't scale. What's your vision for that? Because you're speaking truth. So what's the solution?
I don't know what the solution is. I am sort of with Caroline that I'm going to put my best foot forward and see what happens. As I said earlier, I think we're at 5. I think there are things that we do really, really well, and I think we've grown tremendously in 5 years. And the way that we've done that is by putting a couple ideas out there. Some of them work, some don't. I'm not going to stand here and tell you I got it figured out. I don't. I have some ideas that I've shared with you that are driving the product that I'm building. And I'm really curious to see what happens when it hits the market. And it's probably not going to be perfect when it does, but I'm hoping that it's going to be a step forward. To answer your question a little bit more directly, I think that you are right in some ways about what you said, about the ideal state being, hey teacher, here's a chunk of cash, and go spend it as you will. I think the problem lies in the number that you threw out. When you said, hey teacher, here's $500. If it was, here's $500, I think the school boards would actually do that. But the harsh reality is that $500 for a school when we're talking about districts, we're talking about like tens of thousands of users. Last year we did 150,000 Chromebooks for one school district, right? Like this massive adoption. Like for those of you who have been in the volume purchase program, like you see your numbers, right? Anybody who's got school apps that are used in schools, like, you know, we used to have days where we'd have like, you know, 200 consumer downloads and 50,000 school downloads, right? The usage here is just on orders of magnitude different. And to say things like $500 for a school board to approve, like that's not going to move the needle for you guys. Like it costs money to run these companies, and it costs money to grow these companies outside of the scale of this room. So I don't think it's about $500, right? I think it's significantly more. And when you talk that level, I don't think the school boards are going to give up the keys to the purse strings nearly as much. So I'm not 100% sure on what that looks like in the future, but I do believe that paid apps don't scale. And to follow up on another one of your points, I actually do believe that less is more. I think the market as we've seen it today has evolved the content models as we've seen them today, whether it's Motion Math building a fleet of tools, whether it's Caroline and team building a fleet of tools, whatever it might be, like that model comes from the App Store of like, hey, new and featured, right? You don't see nearly as many apps getting updated and updated and updated and features built and features built and features built because it doesn't make sense when they're paid up front and or they're never going to get featured enough to support it. I wonder if companies should be focusing more of their energy on building a thing that is really successful. I'm going to get the sword here, and continuing to iterate on that, and maybe doing a little bit less is more. It's official, guys. Thank you. Last thing. That's my email address.
Last word, Pierre.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks. Yeah, you know, I saw a lot of apps, hundreds of thousands of school on iOS and Apple, and I've got one app on Chromebook, and I've sold nothing, so I'm wondering about this market really. And but also I think the big issue is education of teachers, you know, because they don't understand the new tools. You say we have wonderful tools, but I was in the school in San Diego recently, and I looked at iPads, and there was no smart apps, no new kind of apps. You know, there was only quiz or something to write. So this job of education of teachers, of people that are of the new tools, what is doing that? Do you plan to do something?
I'll answer your question with a question. Is the App Store the right model for the App Store? Right? Like, is it about the app? I love making apps, right? We all love making apps, right? We all love the products that we build, but at the end of the day, I would argue that there's not an app for that, right? That the app is not the solution. The app is a tool, it's a facilitator of learning. It's an extension of the teacher, like a go-go gadget arm. And so when we advocate for apps, when we talk about discovery of these tools, I think we should be talking about experiences. I think we should be talking about lesson plans. I think we should be talking about resources, and the app is one of those pieces, much like a hammer or a paintbrush, to use Mitch Resnick's language.
And the other one I was thinking about is there something of more of like a Netflix model where you have, Netflix will find properties that are out there, but then they'll also support. They'll create their own apps.
Yeah.
So like Google's doing it now. You have apps there. It's Google Slides. It's all those Google tools you were talking about.
Yeah.
It might be interesting if Google also had for the schools to have a Google Map section in a Google Writing Lab where you're having more apps and stuff that is kind of a base that schools can know they can go to. So just like they would go to Google Slides, they might know that they have these Google other experience, Science Lab, and Google other things.
I think I just got the modern day equivalent of the hook when he jacked my power cord.
Oh no, I just need power.
Thank you, everyone. Come talk
Let's
to me.
give Andy a round of applause.
Hey, by the way, that singularity moment that we were looking for just works.
Yeah, explain what just happened there.
Oh, we took embarrassingly enough, a dongle off an Apple device and plugged it into a Google device, and it
From
just
this
went to the
computer
screen.
to that computer.
And the USB clicker just worked. It's the magic of USB-C, and
answer.